Insulation is measured on a specific scale. Your wall scores a 13, while your window scores a 1. Every single window in your house loses approximately $500 every year, and 80% of that financial loss occurs while you are asleep. However, a $20 piece of rigid foam, cut to fit and secured with magnetic strips, can drop your heating bill by 40%. 5 centuries of Northern European builders utilize this method every night. A Harvard physicist documented the scientific proof, but the window industry effectively erased it. The trail leading from his disappeared book to the building codes that protect a $20 billion market begins with the glass in your window right now. Think about the last heating bill that made you wince. Consider the number at the bottom, the one that climbs every January, the one your utility company never feels obligated to justify. Now, think about what is happening on the other side of every window in your house at this moment. Glass is a terrible insulator. That is not merely an opinion or a rough generalization. It is physics with a specific number attached. A single pane window has an R value of 1. Double pane gets you to 2 or 3. Triple pane, the expensive variety that window salesmen push as a premium upgrade, only reaches 3 to 5. Meanwhile, the wall just 6 inches to the left of that window is R13 minimum, often R21. If your house was built to current energy codes, your window insulates at 1.15 the level of the wall it sits in. Imagine cutting a 12-square-foot hole in your living room wall and covering it with a single sheet of aluminum foil. That is roughly what a single-pane window does to your thermal envelope. Double pane is like 2 sheets of foil, with a pocket of air between them. The analogy breaks down at triple pane, but the underlying principle does not. Your windows are the weakest link in your home's ability to hold heat. And it is not even close. The Department of Energy has measured this. Windows account for 25 to 30% of all residential heating energy loss in the United States. Your walls, your roof, and your foundation combined lose the other 70%. A quarter to nearly a third of your heating bill walks out through surfaces that make up maybe 10 to 15% of your total wall area. During the day, sunlight streaming through glass partially offsets what it loses. After sunset, however, that offset vanishes. Your windows flip into one-directional heat exits, radiating warmth outward for 8 to 12 hours straight, while your furnace burns fuel to replace every degree they give away. The window industry knows these numbers. They have known them for decades. They have a very specific reason for hoping you never run the math yourself. Run the math on your own house. The average American home has about 8 to 10 windows. 10 windows at R1 or R2 exposed to freezing air for 8 to 12 hours a night, 5 months a year. The annual cost runs $500 to $600 per household. This is heat purchased, delivered through your ductwork, pushed into your rooms, and then drained straight through the glass into the sky. You paid for that heat, your utility company counted it, and your windows gave it away for free. The window industry has a solution for you. Replace your windows. Triple pane, low-E coating, argon gas fill, vinyl or fiberglass frames. This costs $15,000 to $30,000 for a typical home. The payback period is 15 to 25 years, by which time the seals on the insulated glass units have started to fail. The argon has leaked out, and the salesman's son is calling about the next generation. But there is another fix. It costs $15 to $30 per window. It requires no contractor, no permit, and no specialized tools. It can match or exceed the R value of a brand new triple-pane window. To understand why you have never heard of it, and why a fix that kept Northern Europe warm for 500 years disappeared from every building manual on the continent, You need to meet a man who spent the last decades of his life trying to tell you. William Shercliffe, a Harvard physicist and veteran of the Manhattan Project, spent the first half of his career helping build the most destructive weapon in human history. He spent the second half trying to stop Americans from wasting heat through their windows. That pivot was not a midlife crisis or a gentle retirement hobby. It was an engineer's response to watching an entire country waste energy through the most obvious weak point in its building envelope, while the people selling windows told homeowners the only solution was buying more windows. Shercliffe had done the kind of physics where you measure things in megatons. Measuring heat loss through a pane of glass was not complicated by comparison. What he found when he started measuring in the late 1970s was so straightforward that it embarrassed him, not because the solution was obscure, but because it was obvious, and nobody in the building industry would talk about it. Take a panel of rigid foam insulation, 1-inch thick polyiso or expanded polystyrene available at any hardware store for a few dollars per sheet. Cut it to fit your window opening. Wrap it in fabric so it looks like a cushion instead of a piece of industrial material. Attach magnetic strips to the edges so it seals against the metal frame or metal tape applied around your window casing. Press it into the window opening at night. Remove it in the morning. That is a thermal shutter. The concept is not more complicated than that. Shercliffe measured the thermal performance with the same rigor he had once applied to nuclear physics. A 1-inch rigid foam panel delivers R5. That single panel pressed into a window opening takes your R1 single-pane window to R6, better than the most expensive triple-pane glass on the market. Use 2-inch polyiso, and you reach R13. That matches your wall. The weakest point in your home's thermal envelope now insulates at the same level as the structure surrounding it for $20 in materials. He published his findings in 1980 in a book called Thermal Shutters and Shades. It contained over 100 designs, hinged panels, sliding panels, roll-up shades, and accordion fold shutters. Every single one was tested, measured, and buildable from hardware store materials for under $30. The book was meticulous and practical, yet it went out of print within a decade. The information was sound. Every measurement was replicated and every design tested. Nobody disproved his numbers or challenged his methods. The book vanished the way useful things vanish when they threaten the revenue model of an entire industry. It happened quietly, without debate, so completely that by 2010, used copies were selling online for over $100 to the small community of energy researchers who still remembered it existed. Shercliffe died in 2006 at 97 years old. His book had been unavailable for nearly 20 years by then. The window industry he spent his later career challenging had grown to $20 billion in annual revenue. But here is what Shercliffe never fully understood in his own lifetime. He thought he was inventing something new. But he was not. He was rediscovering something that medieval builders had understood 5 centuries before he ever picked up a foam panel. The proof he built with Harvard instruments would be validated 16 years after his death by the strictest building standard on Earth. But that is not where the story goes next. 500 years before anyone calculated an R value, every home in Northern Europe already had the solution mounted to its window frames. In Scandinavia, they were called lucker, heavy wooden shutters, often lined with sheepskin or packed with straw, hinged to the interior of the window opening. Closing them at sunset was not a choice or an aesthetic preference. It was the difference between waking up in a warm room and waking up in one where the water bucket had frozen solid overnight. In a longhouse facing a -30-degree winter, with no central heating and no glass thicker than a knuckle's width, the shutter was not a decorative accent. It was survival equipment as critical as the hearth itself. German Fensterläden, English folding shutters, French volets. Every culture in Northern Europe had its own version. Different hardware, same principle, same results. These builders had something more persuasive than any thermometer or insulation chart. They had frostbite. When the consequence of a drafty window is a dead child, you solve the problem with whatever you have. And what they had was wood, wool, and the hard-won knowledge that a panel across a window opening keeps the heat inside. The technique was not regional or limited to a few wealthy estates. It was continental. From Stockholm to Somerset, from Bavaria to Bruges, closing the shutters at sundown was as automatic as locking the door. If your family came from anywhere in Northern Europe, your ancestors did this every night for generations. The behavior was universal because the physics is universal, and physics does not require a peer-reviewed journal to make itself understood to someone who is cold. So the knowledge existed for 500 years across an entire continent. A Harvard physicist documented it with modern instruments and published the proof in 1980. The data is settled, R5 to R13 from materials costing pennies. Yet, ask any building contractor in the United States today what you should do about window heat loss, and every one of them will say the same thing: replace your windows. Not one will mention a thermal shutter. Not one will tell you that a $20 panel outperforms the $15,000 upgrade they are about to sell you. The physics is not the mystery. The mystery is who killed the shutter and whether the most demanding building standard on Earth can bring it back. That trail starts where it always starts, with money. What kills a technology that costs $20 and outperforms a product that costs $15,000? Nobody needed to conspire. The incentives did the work on their own. Before the 1880s, managing heat was an active task. Banking fires, closing shutters, sealing drafts with rags. Central heating changed that overnight. If the furnace replaces whatever the window loses, you stop managing the window. The shutter went from essential to invisible in a single generation. Not because it stopped working, but because cheap fuel let you pretend the problem was gone. Then the glass got bigger. Plate glass dropped in price through the 1920s and 30s. Picture windows, bay windows, floor-to-ceiling walls of light. Modern architecture sold openness as a lifestyle, and a foam panel covering that glass at night contradicted the entire pitch. The shutters shrank and then turned decorative. Those fixed plastic panels bolted to the exterior of American suburban homes, the ones that cannot close, cannot insulate, and cannot do anything at all, are the fossil record of something that used to work. With the shutters gone, the window industry found its real business model, the replacement cycle. Anderson, Marvin, Pella, three companies born before the Great Depression that now dominate a $20 billion market. Double-pane insulated glass units were sold as the fix for energy loss, but the seals on those units degrade. Argon gas leaks out within 15 to 20 years. Frames warp. Condensation clouds the gap between the panes, and the homeowner is back in the showroom. Anderson alone pulls $3.5 billion a year. That revenue rests on one assumption: when your windows underperform, you replace them. A $20 fix that eliminates the need for replacement is not a competing product. It is an existential threat. Then, the regulatory framework sealed the whole system shut. In 1992, the Environmental Protection Agency launched Energy Star, a program that certifies windows, appliances, heating, and cooling systems, manufactured things you purchase. It does not certify the act of closing an insulated panel over your window at night. There is no model number for a piece of foam cut to fit your frame. Building codes followed the same logic. The International Energy Conservation Code specifies minimum window insulation ratings, glazing requirements, and frame materials. It has never, in any edition, mentioned thermal shutters or any form of movable nighttime insulation. Not because they fail, but because they are not products. They are behaviors attached to $20 materials that no one can brand, patent, or sell at a high margin. And the $20 panel that would break the entire cycle sits on a hardware store shelf right now, labeled as insulation board, with nobody in the supply chain motivated to tell you what it does when you press it against your window at night. $20 billion a year in window sales versus $0 in thermal shutter marketing budgets. The ratio tells the entire story. But one country decided to ignore that ratio entirely. They built the most rigorous energy performance standard on Earth, and thermal shutters are written into it. There is a building in Darmstadt, Germany, where a family will eat dinner tonight without once thinking about their heating bill. They have not thought about it for 28 winters. The physicist who made that possible, Wolfgang Feist, founder of the Passive House Institute in 1996, does not tolerate approximation. He started with a single question that no one in the building industry wanted answered honestly. What is the absolute minimum amount of energy a building needs to consume while remaining comfortable throughout the year? The answer he arrived at after years of thermal modeling, field measurement, and iterative testing became the Passive House Standard, the most demanding energy performance certification in the global construction industry. A certified passive house building uses no more than 15 kilowatt-hours per square meter per year for heating. To understand what that number means, compare it to yours. The average American home consumes 10 to 12 times that amount. A passive house building does not just reduce your heating bill, it makes the concept of a heating bill nearly irrelevant. There are now more than 65,000 certified passive house buildings worldwide. They stand in Germany, Austria, Sweden, Canada, Japan, China, and in growing numbers across the United States. They are schools, hospitals, apartment blocks, single-family homes, and office towers. Extreme insulation, airtight construction, heat recovery ventilation, and movable insulation over windows, thermal shutters, external insulated roller shutters, internal insulated panels, automated systems with foam cores that deploy at sunset and retract at dawn. The same principle William Shercliffe documented in 1980. The same principle Scandinavian builders understood 500 years ago, now built into the most scientifically validated building standard on the planet. Feist does not include thermal shutters because he is sentimental about medieval construction or because he read Shercliffe's book. He includes them because the physics demands it. Even triple-pane windows with low-E coatings and argon fills, the absolute best the glass industry can manufacture today, still insulate at R5 to R7. The walls around them in a passive house building insulate at R40 to R60. The window remains the weak point. The only way to close that gap without shrinking the windows themselves is to add a removable layer of insulation that covers the glass when sunlight is not heating it and pulls away when it is. That describes a thermal shutter. There is no other engineering solution that solves the equation. The Fraunhofer Institute for Building Physics in Stuttgart, one of the most respected building science laboratories in the world, measured the nighttime heat loss reduction from insulated exterior shutters on double-pane windows. The reduction was 62%. On single-pane windows, the reduction exceeded 80%. 62 to 80% of your nighttime window heat loss, eliminated by a panel that costs less than dinner at a restaurant. Now ask who writes the building codes that ignore all of this. The International Code Council sets its standards through committees of what it calls interested parties. Anderson, Pella, Marvin, they have permanent seats at that table through the American Architectural Manufacturers Association. Their members sit on the technical committees that decide which window requirements your home must meet. Every code cycle that tightens those requirements without acknowledging thermal shutters is a code cycle that drives demand for the products the members sell. You do not need a conspiracy. You need self-interest and a committee vote. Think about what that means for your house. The most rigorous, most scientifically validated building standard on Earth includes the $20 fix as a core component of its thermal strategy. Your building code pretends the fix does not exist. 65,000 buildings across 30 countries prove it works. Your contractor has never heard of it. The physics is not in dispute anywhere on Earth. The only thing in dispute is whether you should be told. Stand in a passive house building in Darmstadt on a January evening. It is -8 °C outside, 18 degrees Fahrenheit, 26 degrees below what the human body needs to feel comfortable. The triple-pane windows face a black sky that is pulling heat outward through every square centimeter of exposed glass. At 5:30, the automated shutters descend. Foam core panels 60 millimeters thick, sealed against the frame with brush gaskets that make the edges airtight. The R value of each window jumps from 6 to 19 in the time it takes the motor to finish its quiet cycle. The heating system, a unit so compact it fits in a hallway closet, drawing less power than a hairdryer, reduces its output to a whisper. The room temperature does not drop. It will not drop all night. The building holds its warmth the way a thermos holds coffee, and the shutters are the lid. Somewhere in that building, a family is eating dinner. They are not thinking about their windows, not adjusting thermostats or checking the heating bill, or wondering whether the argon gas in their glazing units has started to leak. They will not think about any of those things for the entire winter because the building was designed by a physicist who understood that a $20 principle and a $20 billion industry cannot both be right. And he chose the principle. The window industry chose the revenue. Your building code chose the window industry. And every winter night while you sleep, your windows choose the cold. Shercliffe knew. Feist proved it. 65,000 buildings demonstrated it. 5 centuries of Northern European builders lived it. The $20 solution works. It has always worked. The only people who benefit from you not knowing that are the people selling you the $15,000 alternative. That is the system. And now that you understand how it was built, you also know how to step outside it. The fix is so simple, it borders on insulting. Buy a sheet of rigid foam insulation board, polyiso or expanded polystyrene, 1 or 2 inches thick. Cut it to fit your window opening with a 1/4-inch margin on each side. Wrap it in fabric, cotton canvas, whatever matches your room. Apply adhesive-backed magnetic tape strips around the panel edges. Apply matching magnetic strips around your window casing. Press the panel into place at sunset. Remove it in the morning. Cost per window, $15 to $30. A 10-window house, $200 to $300 total. Time to build all 10 panels, a single afternoon. And the tools required are a utility knife, a tape measure, a straight edge, and scissors. You do not need a contractor, a permit, or any training beyond what a tape measure teaches in 5 minutes. If you want something more refined than a foam panel, Shercliffe documented hinged wooden shutters with foam cores that swing open like cabinet doors. Still under $50 per window, and they look like built-in cabinetry when closed. Your heating bill drops the first month. On a $2,000 annual bill, the panels put $200 to $300 back in your pocket every winter. They pay for themselves before the season is over, possibly before the first month is. Compare that to $30,000 for new triple-pane windows with a 20-year payback and seals that may not last that long. Shercliffe's book is back in print. The 100-plus designs he documented are available again after 2 decades in the dark, spreading through channels that no trade association can shut down. A $20 behavioral fix generates zero revenue for a $20 billion industry. The codes, the certifications, the entire sales apparatus, all of it was built to move products, not solve problems. The physics has not changed. The materials cost $20. The only thing that changed was who convinced you the answer had to be expensive. Thermal shutters fix the window, but the roof above those windows, the surface that takes more weather punishment than any other part of your house, has a fix that the construction industry buried for a different reason entirely. A living roof, soil, plants, and a waterproof membrane that insulates better than fiberglass lasts twice as long as shingles and costs a fraction of what your roofer quoted you. The roofing industry does not want you to hear that number. That archive is already on this channel. Click it now. If this story changed the way you look at the glass in your home and the bills in your mailbox, please subscribe and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the history and engineering truths that the industry has tried to bury. Let's build a more efficient future together. The next hidden treasure of knowledge will be revealed very soon.